So
we can argue Citizens United if you want. I'm very confident that nobody has a good argument against Citizens United. If you want to do that one.
All right, I'll give a good argument against, or I give my best argument against Citizens United. Okay. Hey guys, so got into a quick little discussion with Destiny on there. If I sound a little flustered, if I'm not making clear points, it's because these debate panels, I had been streaming for like 5 hours. And it was like 4:30 in the morning. I worked the next day 7:30 in the morning. I was listening to people talk over for hours and hours about nothing. Okay, and I was a little fed up, so I started talking fast before somebody could cut me off. All right. And what happens is when Destiny, a huge YouTuber like him, he has like 350,000 some subscribers on YouTube and thousands of people watch him on stream and all that. When he comes on a debate panel, everyone comes on and everyone wants to give their points and everyone wants their screen time. You know what I mean? So that's why I may sound flustered or not as concise as I usually am. But basically, the discussions was about Citizens United, and I'm not against Citizens United. Okay. Corporations should be seen as like a legal entity, as a person, right, for court purposes. And Destiny explains a lot of that. But the thing I had a problem with was that a loophole is created, and these super PACs were created after Citizens United. They became very, very commonplace because Citizens United allows people to donate unlimited amounts of money, and the corporations consider people. And what happens is they didn't include nonprofits, so now nonprofits that you don't have to disclose who's like investing or who's a part of the nonprofits, they get to since they're kind of grouped into this, they get to donate unlimited amounts of money to campaigns or whatever. So what ends up happening is you have anonymous people donating unlimited amounts of money because of what's created with Citizens United, even though Citizens United didn't directly address that. And that was kind of my argument. I don't know if I got it across well enough or not, but essentially I would like to, and I say it at the end there, I would like to, you can donate as much money as you want. I just want to know who it came from. It can't be just random like Freedom for America or Patriots for America. All these random like generic names you see on ads. This was paid for the Freedom Revolution Group. You know what I mean? But anyways, let's get right to the video.
The problem isn't being an expert in economics. My problem is just that like all of the criticisms just end up being worthless and meaningless. It reminds me of Occupy Wall Street, where you've got people that are screeching online about how like corporations aren't people. It's like, what do you even mean by that? Like there's like when all of the criticism just doesn't make sense, but they are and they need to be. Didn't you say you published in the field? I guess econ isn't finance, but they like the fact that people have all of these pointed criticisms that point at nothing and have no like reflection of like what actually needs to be changed, or more importantly, what would actually
why do
help
they need
people.
to be people?
Corporations need to be people because they need to be able to own property and they need to be able to represent themselves in court. You want to be able to take a corporation to law if they wrong you. You can't take the individual owners of said corporation. That wouldn't make any sense.
So
Corporations also are people because
before
they are
they were
liability shields
considered
for others.
people, before they were considered people, they just didn't have property, I guess, huh? Like
What do you mean by considered people?
like before the Citizens United and all that sort of ruling like came out, like clearly corporations didn't have property before that point.
All I
right?
know is that in a legal sense, a corporation needs to exist as a separate legal entity because it's the way that our tax system
Yeah, a
is
separate
organized.
legal entity, not as a human being, though.
A corporation is not seen as a human being.
Yeah, they're not. They're considered separate entities. It's not like they're given like
See, this type of misinformation is exactly what I'm talking about, right? It's such a worthless criticism because all it does is it misleads people. Nobody even knows what the conversation should even be about.
We've got Pisco in the chat. Let's fucking tell us. Okay. Is a corporation a person according to the Constitution?
It's a legal person, but it's not like they have like medical rights or they don't have like they don't like.
Can I just
So they have like First Amendment rights. That's like the relevant thing, right?
That's Citizens United. Yeah, that doesn't
Right?
like that. That specifically somewhat refers to that.
It's like okay, so we can all recognize it's like a little bit strange that a corporation can spend unlimited money on like advertising for some political cause. Like we can all recognize slightly strange. Well, okay.
Are legally allowed to do this or do that. Like, I just care more about like right now, corporations do have an outsized influence in elections compared to the average person. Shareholders of company will have more because they just have a lot more money. And I don't think like the best way to fix that necessarily is to like make it so they legally can't, because you fall down all those rabbit holes you guys are talking about with, oh, then you can't sue them. They're not legally obligated for this. So like I like Yang's idea I heard. Like, what do you think about that? Of where you just give each citizen, let's say like $1,000 that they can donate to particular politicians they like every year and write that off their taxes. Where then that would kind of like undercut the corporation's influence without necessarily making them illegal to invest themselves.
Not necessarily, because the corporation could spend an incredible amount of money advertising, right? One candidate, right, and saying like, "Well, give your Yang bucks to this person," right? So that person still has an advantage, right? That's a possibility. So
there are already limits on campaign contributions.
No, but like this is a different situation though.
Right. What you're talking about is expenditures and election communications. And what I have argued and Destiny just said was, how do you differentiate an independent journalist who's organized under a corporation who's trying to put out information about his preferred candidate and Walmart? Is it by? It's not easy to draw that line in terms of constitutional or a principled line. It just seems a policy-driven line. And that
because if we were going. Yeah, because if we were going about like reporting requirements, like basically all of my streams leading up to any election should be illegal. If we were to get rid of Citizens United, because I'm essentially doing an in-kind like donation to these campaigns by running, like how many times have I said positive things about Bernie Sanders? How many times have I said positive things about Biden? Like these are campaign like advertisements just as much as any of their.
You can draw limitations though, right? Like, I mean, that in itself,
well,
I see what you're saying. The problem you're talking about, Stephen, this is not the first time we've discussed this. Me and Pisco have argued about this many times before, buddy, right? But we argued on exactly this point. But you can say, okay, Twitch streams are a thing that you can do, right? We can draw distinctions. We understand that there's a gray line, but we can draw a bright line somewhere if we wanted to, right?
So you're right. We have to draw lines in all parts of our life. So I'm not against line drawing in that sense, but the reason why it's difficult in the context of a constitutional right like the First Amendment is we've just decided as a society that we don't want the government drawing lines with respect to speech, because for whatever reason we consider speech to be different. And so when we put in the federal government control over without having to pass a constitutional amendment or constitutional provision of like new.
All right, I'll give a good argument against, or I give my best argument against Citizens United. Okay, so speech, right? It's important. It influences people, and the Supreme Court basically said, okay, it's fine to have this. It won't distort the political process because the public is going to be able to see where the money's coming from. And there is the Citizens United loophole, right, that creates the super PACs. It says nonprofits can spend unlimited amounts of money. And what happens is you have these random companies pop up, Freedom for America, whatever generic name, paid for this campaign. No one actually knows. The whole point of Citizens United was, yes, you could spend money, right? A corporation did have the power to spend money on whatever candidate, but the reasoning behind it is written in the Supreme Court reasoning statement they put out. It was like, oh yeah, it's fine because people will know where the message is coming from.
Are you a lawyer? That's I don't
I'm reading the Supreme Court reasoning right here from the judge. It was a 5-4.
I mean, no. I mean, the judges recognized, I think, that this could have distortive effects, but all speech can have distortive effects.
Would not distort the political process because the public would be able to see paying for ads and who it would give proper weight to the different speakers and messages. End quote. That's from the judges. It was 5-4 decision. And let me finish. My last point. The top 100 donors of super PACs, right, spent $2.9 billion. That's 78% of all super PAC spending. I don't know what rich people are spending $2.9 billion. And it's true what Destiny's saying about it's kind of hard to see a correlation between political ads and how it affects, the average voter. But in my opinion, and I don't know why someone would spend so much money for what? Just for free speech? What is the counter argument to that? Like, why are rich people so concentrated spending billions of dollars in basically nonprofit organizations that you can't tie to anybody for candidates? I don't know.
Super PACs existed before Citizens United, and that was.
But it allowed them to.
and it was bad
not disclose who's actually. They created these nonprofits that people don't know who's behind them. People don't know who's funding it.
I don't know what you're. So the thing with Citizens United was commingling of corporate revenue with super PACs.
The loophole created by Citizens United is what I'm talking about. I'm not talking about the
loophole.
Basically, it allows nonprofits to be created, and you don't have. Yes, that's how it allows nonprofits to give
themselves have the right to have election expenditures.
Yes, but nonprofits popped up because nonprofits, you don't have to disclose the individual investors, okay, the individual people running it. So that's where you get the Freedom for America. You don't know who the fuck is behind Freedom for America, right? That's the whole point.
For nonprofits in the law already, so I don't know why you're saying Citizens United changed anything.
Because now Citizens United allows those nonprofits to spend ad infinitum, right, and any amount of money. Do you understand what I'm saying? It created a loophole in the nonprofit law that already existed. Because now these nonprofits prop up out of nowhere, and you can see the data. Thousands of these nonprofits appeared out of nowhere immediately after Citizens United that gave a segue for the political class, elite, whatever you want to call it, the billionaires, to give money. I'm a capitalist, okay? So whatever. I don't necessarily have the biggest panties in a bunch about this, but I'm just giving an argument against Political United or Citizens United for that reason. Who's spending? Why are these top 100 donors make up 78% of them spending $3 billion for no reason? Explain that to me.
Pisco, can I ask you a question? Why would that be relevant, though?
Why would what be relevant?
So asking, like, why are they spending their money on this specifically if the goal of the court isn't necessarily determined?
Because the argument is, do they have an overwhelming, do they have more power, right, than the average individual? You could, and maybe I would argue, maybe they do deserve the more power because they kind of, they're more responsible for human capital and every kind of capital, okay? But I'm just kind of putting that out there.
Okay.
As far as the anonymity of it and the unlimited spending,
I was asking
that created
the Supreme Court making their decision. Why would that be relevant?
I mean, they explicitly said that they did not believe the compelling purpose of preventing vast accumulations of capital overrode the First Amendment rights of the corporation. So I don't know what's going on here. And also
the reasoning was because they knew who was coming from, but then the nonprofits created so you could know.
Analysis at issue? What's the legal analysis? I mean, the legal analysis is one of strict scrutiny.
The judge said you're right. The judge said this. That it would not distort the political process because people would know where the money's coming from, right? And then the nonprofits appeared because now you don't have to disclose who's.
You're giving like a byproduct. This wasn't the material reason why this statement was made. You're giving like a byproduct of what it might have.
That's my argument against Citizens United. I'm not necessarily saying that corporations should not be allowed to.
Citizens United was not ruled that way because the judges said, well, we're going to rule this way so that people know where the money is coming from. It has to do with the First Amendment rights that you have to contribute to an organization and not restrict that just because you're coming up in an election, essentially.
So the difference is the dicta and the holding, right? The holding is what's the rationale of the decision. Something that like Justice Kennedy said on the side isn't like legal law or anything. They're just being like, we don't suspect this will cause problems because we think blah, 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 blah. That's not the basis of the decision. That's just him responding to something the dissent probably said.
Sure. So then I would ask Pisco if they believed that corruption how do I put this?
It had unintended consequences. Is what I'm saying.
Sure. So if there was like that large of a risk of corruption, would they even still have the ability, on the basis of their current judicial philosophy, to not stay consistent with freedom of speech in that aspect? Like, is that even relevant?
Is the amount of quote unquote corruption probably would be relevant to certain people with respect to an analysis of how compelling the purpose is. The law is in a really weird place right now where, you would think that direct campaign financing, direct expenditure related to politicians themselves would be preferable to this kind of thing because at least politicians would be held accountable for all their donors. So I agree that the state of the law is kind of in a weird place where I would prefer that these campaigns get their money directly from corporations. But in terms of the analysis, I think essentially the court said we cannot predict, we cannot say that the influence of quote unquote accumulations of capital, accumulations of money is so much to overcome the right of these corporations' First Amendment rights. That's essentially the analysis.
How would you even quantify that in comparison to like the value of free speech?
It's hard. That's why they don't want to draw that line.
Yeah, that's what I was about to say.
Hey, if anyone can donate, like, hey, why not? Foreign countries, you can also donate to our elections now. Why not? Fuck it. All rules off.
Well, no. There is a compelling purpose for foreign aid, and there's laws against foreign contributions. The courts have found that there is a compelling purpose there. Whether or not you think that compelling purpose makes sense to you, maybe it doesn't.
Well, hold on. Wait, to be clear, there is no compelling purpose because the First Amendment doesn't protect foreign non-U.S. citizens.
Exactly. But there is, because if you're a non-citizen and you come into the United States and you're in the United States, and remember, so the supposed rationale of Citizens United is that we can't distinguish on speech based on the entity speaking. You would think that a non-citizen in the United States would have their First Amendment rights respected, but in fact,
it depends on your non-citizen status, right? Though what rights you're afforded. I don't believe every non-citizen in the United States is afforded.
Well, depend on federal law, but as a constitutional matter, it would seem clear that the United States Congress would be free to take everyone's non-citizens' right away from for speaking, which seems weird. I mean, you say in Citizens United that doesn't matter who the entity is, we're respecting freedom of speech for everyone, but then you deny the right to non-citizens of the United States. That seems weird. I don't agree with that.
Pisco, are you seriously arguing for foreign governments being able to donate money?
I don't think he's
or like foreign groups.
No, I think there is a compelling purpose to prevent those groups from. But
we're not on that bridge.
Being allowed to as well, though, right?
What's that?
I think you could make compelling arguments on both sides. I think I probably fall for no foreign government contribution, but the United States is involved in the affairs of a lot of other countries in the world, and maybe sometimes it might feel like them having no representation in our government does feel pretty shitty when our policies have direct impacts on them. I wouldn't necessarily like buy into that argument. I think I stand that foreign contributions shouldn't be allowed, but I mean, like, the United States policy is worldwide, right?
Oh yeah,
so
we're hypocritical
the ones fucked over by U.S. policy, and the ones who would be able to donate are like on complete opposite ends.
Should there be a cap on the amount of money a corporation can spend? Maybe is a more interesting way to look at it. Or should it? Should because right, that's
a cap.
Well, that's not with supers.
That's
I'm just throwing. Go ahead.
Cap for, I know there's a cap for correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe there's a cap for
for direct donations.
Contributions from corporations and entities, right?
Yeah. But as of right now, you can.
There's a limit, but
through
for
super
supers,
PACs.
it's infinite.
Right.
Wow,
exactly.
I did not hear any of that.
If a nonprofit popped up and they wanted to advocate against climate change, should we restrict how much money they're allowed to spend advertising for that cause?
They should disclose. I think there should be more transparency in the terms of campaign finance, directly tied to campaign finance.
You should not be able to spend infinite money that is untraceable.
You can spend infinite money if we know where it's coming from. That's my take on it.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was it, guys. But anyways, I have another video coming up, so make sure to subscribe and like. It's a capitalism versus socialism video where I was arguing against some fellow socialists from Twitch about how capitalism can be the way forward, or how we can progress, worldwide through the mechanics of capitalism, and how socialism, in my opinion, may or may not fall short in terms of those, like goals we have. But yeah, watch out for that. Love you. Bye.